Welcome to Libertarian-Minded. Obviously, this is not Peter or Tara. This is Millie Ryan, producer. We have a special episode for you today. Our own Terra Radliff did an awesome presentation for the John Birch Society the other day. And if you missed the Zoom presentation, we have it all here for you. You can hear the entire presentation and see it on our YouTube channel, Libertarian-Minded, and this is well worth watching. The presentation is entitled The Dangers of Real ID with a subtitle, Government Coercion Used to Enact a National Digital ID. And Tara does what she does best, connects the dots. Tara's presentation will really help you understand what the real ID is and how the government is forcibly embedding this into the U.S. infrastructure. The massive nationwide build-out of data centers are not just server farms. They're a physical backbone of the control grid, and Tara's going to describe it and walk you through what she sees happening.
Good evening, everyone. Sorry for the bright light. I'm in southern Arizona, and it is definitely that time of year. The time of year when car accidents happen when you're not wearing your sunglasses. Anyway, my name is Lisa Von Geldern, and I'm going to start us off with a prayer. So if you will all pause for a moment. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, by the power of God, thrust into hell Satan and all the evil spirits that prowl about the world, seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. Now we're going to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which she stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen. So I'd like to introduce our speaker tonight. Her name is Terra Radliff, and Terra lives in Arizona near me, and she happens to be a good friend. And I saw her give this presentation, and I thought it was important enough that it needed to be shared with all the rest of you. So Terra is a very passionate, very active local activist here in the Tucson area. She has a podcast. She is committed to the principles of freedom and defending all of our freedoms and promoting awareness among our citizens. She was inspired by the 2020 COVID narrative and conducted extensive independent research. And I can tell you this lady is definitely a researcher. And she likes to critically evaluate information provided by government sources and mainstream media. She is dedicated to empowering all of us through knowledge and advocacy. Tara's background in law enforcement, her degree in molecular biology, woo, and her experience as an independent business owner provide her with unique insights. Tara continually seeks opportunities to protect individual liberties, promote informed decision-making, and advance freedom. And what I want to tell you all about her as well is she is the best friend you could have. She is absolutely a solid human being. And she's going to talk tonight about something that y'all should take seriously. It's so much easier just to go with the flow and let government funnel us into the easier, softer way, using computers, using our phones, and giving away all of our information for free. And it's very dangerous. And Tara's going to tell us all about that tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate that introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. And I want to give a huge shout out to the Mesa, Arizona chapter for hosting me. Thank you so much. So it actually took Lisa quite a while to convince me to join JBS because I was so busy. But the more I researched and the more I started reading the articles, like the New American articles, the more I realized that a good part of the JBS mission is to grow liberty. And that's what I'm all about. I love the grassroots activism that JBS supports because that's where we can affect real change in our communities. I've seen it happen. So, as I was researching for our podcast this past year, I started seeing this disturbing trend about the Real ID and its supporting digital infrastructure being embedded in the government. And I feel like it's my duty to educate and open more minds and eyes and hearts to the need to actively resist the Real ID and everything it represents, including convenience, because convenience is winning the battle over freedom right now. This issue transcends all political parties. It's about freedom, period. It's about having the freedom to make your own choices in life, not being told what you can and can't do or can and can't buy. So I'd like everyone to think of the first part of my presentation as a beginner's 101 course on the Real ID and what it represents, because that's important. Then I'll move into how the government is forcibly embedding the digital infrastructure into the US. And finally, I want to leave everyone with a sense of hope and give you ways that each one of you can make a difference and make change. All right. So I subtitled my presentation as Government Coercion Used to Enact a National Digital ID. And I use this quote because I think it exemplifies what a digital ID scheme embodies, what we're closed off to. This is the reality of what a real digital ID is. And I'm going to use the word real and digital together. You're going to see why as we continue. So digital ID schemes are about they're not about privacy or personal freedom or civil liberties or online child protection, immigration, or voting. They are all about surveillance and control through coercion and force. So what is the Real ID? The Real ID Act passed in 2005, and it set the standards for the issuance of sources of identification for federal purposes. And it mandates digital features and databases, laying the groundwork for digital identification. So it requires a digital photo, it requires states to build infrastructure around that data, and it mandates motor vehicle databases to the information being shared between states. The Department of Homeland Security's implementing regulation for the Real ID made mobile driver's licenses or digital driver's licenses acceptable for federal purposes. The Driver's Privacy Protection Act has loopholes. So this act governs how state DMVs release personal information. And while it does prohibit public disclosure, the exceptions create these loopholes for companies to get our information. The 2020 Real ID Modernization Act. So this mandated states to partner with private entities like big tech companies to develop the technology to modernize. And these partners will have access to our data. And depending on state contracts, they could use the data for their own purposes. So bottom line, the Real ID is meant to be morphed into a national digital ID, but ultimately a global digital ID. So what's wrong with this? The Real ID is a federally compliant national ID. Well, the 10th Amendment says powers not delegated to the US are reserved for the states. But the Real ID Act is creating a national identity registry, and those powers are supposed to stay in the states. The Fourth Amendment keeps us safe against unreasonable searches and seizures. So the Real ID promises further privacy abuses. It allows future expansion of quote unquote official purposes of the Real ID, which could be with banking, employment, and healthcare. And it also allows states to collect this biometric data from us or the building blocks of a total surveillance state. So I'm talking about a digital ID. What is it? A digital ID is an electronic representation of an individual's identity used for online verification. So these digital credentials include a name and date of birth, passwords, biometric data like fingerprints and facial recognition, device info, that kind of thing. And traditional digital IDs are managed by these huge centralized authorities and databases because they need to share and move a lot of information. There's also this thing called a digital ID wallet, which is used to store and manage all the digital IDs that are out there, like government IDs and passports, that kind of thing. So a digital ID works, it's based on biometric authentication. So every person can be accurately identified by their unique physical and behavioral traits. So physical would be facial or iris or retina recognition, fingerprints, DNA, cardiac signatures. Behavioral would be like walking gaits or typing patterns. So this biometric verification it's becoming commonplace at every level of our society because they want it normalized, and it's being touted as convenience on purpose. So there are a lot of security and privacy concerns about biometric data. One, it can be hacked, and you can't reset your fingerprint or your iris like you can a password. Businesses and governments can misuse the data. There have been quite a few instances of false identification. And in a 2026 identity fraud report, they noted that digital forgeries and biometric fraud was rapidly increasing. So digital IDs are going to make a significant impact into many areas of our life, including voting and healthcare, banking, education, government services. I wanted to include this slide because I think it's important to understand that we are being nudged in a fear-based way to accept the solution that is being handed to us from private companies like big tech and the government. So here they're saying, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff that's going wrong. And people react, oh no, we need something to help save us and keep us safe. And here's the solution, real ID or digital ID. So a real digital ID represents the end of state and personal sovereignty. It is one of the foundational keys for the digital control grid. And if you do not comply, you will be shut out, period. Fully imposed, it'll be on your phone, digital, but later under your skin. And there are instances of that starting to happen. Be real time and remotely accessible, used to track and control absolutely everything you do. And I'll explain that in a little more in just a minute. I wanted to show this chart from the World Economic Forum because I think it really illustrates well how a digital ID is crucial to controlling absolutely everything you do and everything that's listed around in this circle. But there's more at play here. So I want to talk about AI and data centers. And yes, I do understand that there are pros to these things and this technology and cons. But what I want to represent is the full picture. I want everyone to understand that there are pros and cons and to make a balanced decision based on both. So I want to educate you. The real digital ID is the foundational key, but AI is the tool that makes it possible and the control grid possible. AI can track, trace, and monitor, analyze in real time 24/7. Even law enforcement is starting to use AI predictive policing systems. We actually have a unit at the Tucson Police Department here that's doing that. And then data centers house the AI brains, I call them, or the processing centers. And there are some issues that I think it's worth talking about with data centers. So they use a massive amount of resources. Energy, for example, Project Matador, it's a proposed hyperscale, so gigantic AI data center in Texas, and it will consume more power than 38 US states. Water, Northern Virginia has over 300 data centers, and in 2023, they used almost 2 billion gallons of water. Farmland is being bought up to build these data centers and their utility infrastructure. So that led me to think, well, okay, are we going to have energy lockdowns because the centers need this stuff? Are we going to have food and water scarcity? I don't know, but it's just something to think about. There's also an issue with pollution with data centers. For instance, water. They use our drinking water, and during the process of cooling, they put anti-corrosives, anti-scaling agents, and biocides in the water. And as it evaporates, the stuff in the water that's already there, like nitrates and heavy metals, they condense. And then the data centers put it back in our aquifer. And they do that so they can claim they are net zero water, but the water they're putting back in the ground is now contaminated. Air, data centers have a bunch of industrial scale backup generators that run a lot, and that is polluting the air, and people are having lung issues around data centers. Sound pollution. There's audible sound like constant humming and thrumming, but there's also something called infrasound, and that's below the range of human hearing. It's usually felt, not heard, and it causes things like headaches, insomnia, nausea, anxiety, but it's also affecting the wildlife around data centers, and the wildlife is actually moving away from them. And then there's light pollution too. I forgot to put that. I want to mention a couple current events regarding data centers. In March this year, Nevada Energy literally told almost 50,000 Lake Tahoe customers that they had to find another source for energy because they're going to divert theirs to a data center. And last month, Hill County, Texas was, I believe, the first to put a pause on construction of data centers. A couple of weeks later, the developer sued them, so I'm really interested to see how that plays out. Last month, the New American put out this really good article, and I wanted to showcase it because the graphics are pretty cool too, but it's a really good read. But it's not just AI. So technological advances have enabled highly sophisticated means of privacy invasion, and it's largely due to the expansion of wireless networks. So that could include Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, 5G, routers, towers, satellites. The FCC is working on a regulatory change that would make it easier for companies to install these towers, like giving them automatic approval, and the local government has no say. But due to public backlash, they are now slow walking those regulations for now. I love to hear this kind of stuff. This is how we can make a change locally. In Congress, the American Broadband Development Act was going through Congress. It would have eliminated local government authority over where these towers and infrastructure would be placed, but the bill was actually postponed due to public backlash. So talking about wireless networks, so many things rely on it. Anything smart, the smart meters, lights, homes, wearables like watches and rings, digital currencies, digital ID, AI, a lot relies on these networks. So I also, just like before, I want to make sure everyone has a balanced view of what the pros and cons are to these technologies so that you can make a balanced decision about how you're going to use them. So when we have a digital infrastructure where you are required to have a digital ID, it needs to have a zero trust cybersecurity system, and they call it never trust, always verify. So absolutely everything you do has to be verified by your digital ID and your biometrics. There's zero privacy. Wearable health devices and personal health trackers like smartwatches, rings, monitors, hearing aids, they can provide inaccurate electronic health data. They're susceptible to privacy breaches, and they monitor you 24/7. AI chatbots, they are designed to create emotional attachment and dependency. They pose a risk to everyone, especially children, but they can encourage harmful and illegal behaviors. They can provide inappropriate content, which they have. There are cases about this, and they can aggravate mental health conditions. There's also something that's called AI psychosis, where people can develop or experience worsening psychosis because of the use of AI. There's also this thing called cognitive offloading. There was a study done where they had coders use AI to perform their tasks, and they rated everyone, and they had control groups and stuff. AI usage with the coders actually reduced their new skill formation. And then there's cognitive decline. An MIT study last year suggests that too much AI could actually increase our cognitive decline. And then there's dependency on the technology. So if there's no electricity, no internet, you have no digital money, no digital ID, access to nothing. But not only that, your access can actually be turned off. So I believe it was last year, there was a Amazon smart home owner who was locked out of his house for a week because an Amazon driver falsely accused him of racism, went back to Amazon, said, "Hey, he said this." Amazon shut the homeowner out of his house without contacting him, and he was locked out for a week. Job losses. Between January and about mid-May of this year, over 88,000 layoffs were linked to AI in the US. And this could be destructive across all layers of our economy because it's going to put a strain on government services and other businesses. And just to put it into perspective, in May, a company in London called Standard Chartered actually was looking to replace, quote, lower value human capital, unquote, with AI. Some companies, this is how they see us compared to AI. It's pretty scary. What's even more scary is looking towards AI or machine for divine guidance. This is part of transhumanism. And I think it's really very concerning and something to stay away from. So also, will our thoughts remain private? There is actually an AI tutor and chatbot that uses generative AI with real-time EEG data to read the studier's mind. Apple has patents out that make their AirPods read brain activity. So all those earpods you see people walking around with all day long, I'm going to show you some more stuff about that in just a minute. So let's go deeper. Let's talk about surveillance capitalism, because this is a huge part of this digital infrastructure. You are the commodity. So surveillance capitalism is monetizing data captured through monitoring people's movements and behaviors online and in the physical world. Digital technologies observe us, and they find ways to get us to give them their data. And they collect all this data about our behaviors and preferences and interactions, and they package them all up and resell them for profit. These companies are taking our personal data and claiming it as their own. And in order to do this, they have to collect our data everywhere 24/7. And I'm going to list out some things of how they're doing this. So app permissions is a huge thing. When you download an app, the app requests all the permissions be enabled. And I want to talk about one specifically. Excuse me. It's called the nearby devices permission. This allows an app to find and connect to and determine the position of other nearby devices. So think of walking down an aisle in the grocery store, or down an aisle in Home Depot, and you've got your Wi-Fi and your Bluetooth enabled, and your phone is going ping, ping, ping on everyone else's devices, and they're catching all this data, like this web of all your connections and everyone you've been around. Microsoft Copilot is an AI-powered feature. It has this feature that takes screenshots of your browser every few seconds. Smartwatches and rings and monitoring devices and hearing aids, they are collecting audio and biometric data 24/7. So heart rate, blood pressure, movement, glucose levels, your temperature. Alexa, Ring, Google Assistant, Siri, they're recording audio and video 24/7. So if you have these in your home, do you really want big tech knowing exactly everything you say and do 24/7? That's quite a privacy invasion. I liked this illustration because it just shows how many devices are out there and watching us and collecting all this data to resell for profit. Earbuds, I mentioned that earlier. So in 2023, Apple filed for a patent making their AirPods able to read electrical brain activity and then transmit that data to be analyzed. Well, last year they filed another patent to include cameras and the ability to track biometrics, and then have it analyzed by AI. So you have this happening in your brain when you're walking around with these AirPods all day long. Amazon Echo with Alexa, starting last year, all of the voice recordings are now sent directly to the cloud where it can be looked at and hacked. Surveillance pricing, this is becoming a big thing. These are electronic price tags in grocery stores. I know Aldi has them. I know some of the bigger chains like Albertsons and Fred Meyer's, they are looking to do this too. But basically what it is if you have an app for this company or you're on your device and you have Bluetooth and Wi-Fi enabled, and they will look at all your data and find out how much you are willing to pay for an item, and the price tag will change when you get near it or when you go to the register. Even Walmart has barcodes on some of their clothing instead of pricing. So if you scan the barcode on your phone, it has access to your phone, all your activity. With AI, it analyzes how much it thinks you're willing to pay. So everyone's going to pay a different price. Toys with AI chatbots. These are stuffed animal and toy robots. So a lot of these have microphones and cameras, and this can expose your children to explicit content potentially. But it also raises a lot of privacy and emotional influence concerns because they can talk back to your kids and you're not going to be around it all the time. So you're not going to hear and see what's going on. In public education, it's called student safety. They're giving kids laptops and tablets and tracking them everywhere. And this is on purpose because they collect it and monetize it. But I don't want you to believe me. I want you to believe an expert.
Wearable devices. So these are brain sensors that are starting to be embedded in everyday devices, but until now have been a number of niche companies that really have focused on mindfulness and meditation. The use of, for example, brain sensors that can pick up electrical activity in the brain at a pretty low resolution, but advances in AI have both improved what the signal is that can come from the brain and enabled the miniaturization of those products. As a lot of the major tech companies start to invest in these brain sensors, it's a huge, I think, untapped market in many ways of integrating them into everyday devices. These are earbuds or watches or headphones and the soft cups around the ears. Many of those products are hitting the market this year, and others are hitting them within the next 2 years, such that people can listen to music, a phone call, etc., while having those devices in ears.
Okay, and that was from last year at the World Economic Forum. So they are already embedded in a lot of products. Amazon Ring and Google Nest, they have a feature called Familiar Faces. And what it does is it transforms these devices into devices that proactively collect, identify, and log the biometric identity of absolutely everyone who walks by that lens without consent. The good news is this month there was a federal class action lawsuit filed against Amazon for this exact reason, and I'm curious to see how that goes. Amazon Ring has a feature called Search Party. They were going to partner with Flock Safety, with all of Flock Safety's cameras. And this feature was to reunite lost dogs with their families. That's how they advertised it. And that's really feel good. And yes, there could be some good that comes out of it. However, the reality is that all of the nearby participating outdoor cameras would automatically start looking and logging biometrics actively of everyone around them, because they're not just going to look at, oh, that's a potential match maybe. They have to look at everyone in order to find the one they're looking for. Due to public backlash, Amazon actually canceled the Flock safety integration, which I think is great. If you have not heard about Flock Safety, they are a police technology company that sells surveillance technology like drones and license plate readers, and they track everyone 24/7 with their cameras and technology. Their AI cameras can actually detect the fingerprint of your vehicle. They don't need a license plate. They can just log you by the dent, scrapes, and bumper stickers on your car. Excuse me. They boast that they are the largest public-private surveillance network, and their drones can cover 50 miles and have thermal night vision. This is a serious Fourth Amendment issue, but this is how the government is getting around privacy and constitutional issues, because it's this private company, Flock Safety, that gathers the data. The government is just buying that data from them. But good news, there is this building momentum all across the US against Flock safety cameras, and they create grassroots local chapters just like JBS, and they are educating their elected officials about what Flock safety is doing, and they're getting success. There are local jurisdictions that are canceling their contracts with Flock safety. But Flock Safety is not the only one. So this is a company called Leonardo. They are the 12th largest defense contractor in the world, and they are owned in part by the Italian government. They are embedded across the US too. And something I recently found with them, they have a feature called Signal Trace. This is pretty scary. So Flock cameras kind of log license plates so they can see where everywhere you're going. Signal Trace identifies people by the signals emitted from their electronic devices they travel with. So the fitness trackers, smartwatches, earbuds, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, RFID tags, cell phones. That's pretty scary. Amazon Sidewalk. So Echo and Ring devices can connect and share their internet and some data with any sidewalk-enabled device. So we're talking smart locks, lights, cameras, tile trackers. So basically, your Echo and Ring at your house will share your internet connection with strangers' devices and send that data like location to Amazon's cloud, and they can do it from up to a half a mile away. This feature is enabled by default, but you're not allowed to see how many devices connect to you. So having these devices in your home creates one more node in this mesh network of surveillance that is being built out. I want to talk about one layer deeper, some terms that I'm going to leave in your hands to research, but they are important to note. Technocracy, transhumanism, biosurveillance, biodigital convergence, Internet of Everything, and cognitive liberty. So that is the right to self-determination over your brain and mental experiences. And that's going to become really important because of all these devices that can read brain waves. I love this illustration, the 5 pillars to enslave humanity, because you have all of these devices in the top left corner that are surveilling and collecting data, the Internet of Things, and that information goes to the cloud where it's analyzed by AI. It's all put on the blockchain, and that creates the zero trust cyber security system or cyber system, where you have to have a digital ID to do absolutely everything, and they know everything about you. All right, so that was the first part. Now I'm going to go into my second part. And the example I want to give is you can't fly if you don't comply. And that is a lie. You can still fly without a real ID, but I had to update this presentation with a big but. So so US passports are now biometric, and I would argue that they are a form of federal identification. I actually flew last fall with my regular driver's license. Yes, they hassled me a little bit, but I was able to fly. I have not flown since February of this year when TSA implemented the Confirm ID program, but I plan to try to get through with just a regular driver's license and see what happens next time I fly. So Confirm ID was hailed as an alternative to the Real ID, but it is just another form of biometric identification that they are making you pay for. So I wanted to note that this notice for this program was put on the Federal Register, and they only had it open for public comment for 1 day. That speaks a lot about how they were trying to get it passed through with as little pushback as possible. So basically, what it does is that you have to pay, and then you go over to a biometric kiosk where they scan you and they verify your identity with the secure flight watch list. They say they will attempt to verify you, but it's not a guarantee. And this program is optional, but if you don't have an acceptable ID, you will not be allowed through security and you could miss your flight. This is just more fear-based nudging, and they are increasing the pressure with this Confirm ID program. Another note, you can opt out. So you do not have to have your picture taken at the TSA checkpoint. Just make sure your face is not in the viewfinder and hand your documents to the agent and say, I don't want my picture taken, thank you. You don't have to be rude about it. You can also opt out of the scanning machine. When I flew in the fall, they wanted me to go through that machine because I didn't have a real ID, and I said, no, thank you. And you get a pat down. But then it made me think, well, how is going through this machine identifying me if I don't have a real ID? It doesn't. It's just a way of them to try to coerce me into getting the real ID. All right, so that's kind of heavy. So I wanted to put in just something that I hope makes you laugh. It made me laugh. So how is the needle moving at home? What is happening? So digital currency, an integral part of a digital ID scheme is digital, programmable, trackable, and traceable money. In January of last year, an executive order was signed banning central bank digital currencies, but this was just a sleight of hand because in July, the Genius Act was signed into law. And what it did was it created a legal framework for stablecoins. And stablecoins are a digital currency issued by private parties tied in value to the US dollar and the Treasury. They are, in essence, a CBDC. They're just not issued by central banks. And they are in every respect a US dollar, except in the legal sense, because they are not a national currency. Every transaction on the blockchain will be documented and recorded. There will be no privacy. And in the act, it is written that the Secretary of State and issuers of stablecoins can remotely and automatically block transactions or users and can freeze or seize a user's stablecoins. The war on cash in February last year, Trump directed the Treasury to stop minting new pennies because they cost too much to make. But according to the latest annual report from the US Mint, each penny costs 3.7 cents to make, but each nickel costs 13.8 cents to make. So I'm wondering if the nickel is the next coin to go. The Big Beautiful Bill started tracking cash tips, which means they're tracking cash flow, no privacy with cash. In March last year, an executive order was signed that basically made the federal government payments, distributions, and receipts all paperless. So bottom line, this is not freedom. It's financial slavery rebranded as freedom. Tokenization of assets. The Clarity Act, with the targeted signing date of July 4th this year, will privatize U.S. financial systems and set up a tokenization system. It's going to create digital tokens that represent all your assets. So stocks, bonds, 401ks, real estate, land, everything. These tokens will be programmable, trackable, and censorable versions of your money and everything you own. And all this data will be shared without congressional approval to foreign entities, central banks, DOJ, the Fed, and any other person deemed quote unquote appropriate. Power is going to be consolidated, compliance is mandatory, and a lot of smaller businesses are probably going to shudder from this. The Treasury could order stablecoin issuers and crypto intermediaries to freeze transactions with no court order required. And the Bank Secrecy Act powers used after 9/11 now apply to crypto. Investments in August last year, an executive order was signed opening up 401k plans to non-traditional investments. So private equity, digital assets, private loans, infrastructure deals. Bottom line, most non-traditional investments are very complex. They're expensive and they are not appropriate for typical retirement savers. So I started wondering, well, who are they meant for? And the only thing I could come up with was major private investment firms like Blackstone or BlackRock. Banking and regulatory framework. In May of this year, an executive order was signed that will require financial institutions to strengthen customer identification. Reports indicate that the US passport is going to be used, and remember, passports are now biometric. So tying bank accounts to a biometric passport is going to transform them into a de facto national ID requirement for financial survival. This is being touted as immigration reform, but its true agenda is to build out a monetary control grid. Also in May, an executive order was signed to update regulations to allow integration of digital assets and innovative technology into our traditional financial services and payment systems. Healthcare, this is big. So last year, RFK Jr. announced a partnership that would enable the NIH to build a real-world data platform, ostensibly to study the cause of autism, which is wonderful. However, claims data, electronic medical records, and consumer wearables data was gathered from Medicare and Medicaid data without anyone's consent. And I want to bring up this term of nationwide health tech ecosystem, and you're going to see why in just a moment. When this is created, it opens the door for things like digital IDs linked to health access. Well, this is already happening via QR codes and biometrics. Some big hospitals are requiring you to scan QR codes to get in. Some of the federal healthcare agencies are requiring biometrics. Also, real-time biosurveillance. This is happening through wearables. Algorithmic decision-making for care eligibility. This is happening in insurance companies. So they are giving over their claims reviews to AI, and they're saying you're going to deny like a certain percentage of these claims. So if you have a claim that's denied by your insurance company, appeal it. Most likely they'll reverse it. It can also lead to social credit style systems disguised as health equity indexes and predictive policing of our personal health choices. Now, I brought this up because in July of last year, RFK Jr. announced the launch of the National Health Tech Ecosystem. And it's a partnership between federal agencies, private tech, hospitals, and insurance companies because they want to accelerate the responsible use of AI and other emerging technologies in healthcare. Well, some of these big tech companies are Amazon, Apple, Google, OpenAI. And this ecosystem is going to include AI-powered diagnostics and treatment planning, so no doctor, digital health monitoring across wearable devices, and an interoperable data system shared across agencies and providers. This is that huge data sharing platform. In March of this year, the Centers for Medicaid and Medicare Services announced a rollout of enhanced logins with biometric features. Right now, some of them are required, some are optional, depending on the company. In March of this year, the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee held a hearing titled Transforming Healthcare with Data. So their goal is patient empowerment, but what they're really doing is expanding the flow of medical data, connecting systems across the country, integrating AI, and accelerating the digital health infrastructure. So bottom line, this is a threat to everyone's medical privacy, patient autonomy, and individual freedom. Data sharing. In March of last year, an executive order was signed calling for data sharing of personal information on Americans across federal agencies. And Palantir was reportedly enlisted to do this. If you have not heard of who Palantir is, they are a data analysis and technology, excuse me. They are a data analysis and technology firm. They function as an AI data tracking and surveillance platform. It was co-founded by Peter Thiel and originally funded by the CIA's venture capital arm In-Q-Tel. So they have received millions of dollars, and in May of last year, the DoD awarded them an $800 million contract. They worked with DOGE last year, and now they are embedded in pretty much every federal agency. The Big Beautiful Bill. It was signed into law July 4th last year, and it makes a digital surveillance state permanent in the United States. It is an aggressive expansion of federal biometric surveillance infrastructure. Billions were allocated for digital tracking systems nationwide. Do you know that all major state and federal highways will now be monitored 24/7 in real time? And TSA and DHS are retrofitting U.S. airports to be totally biometric. Also, the Department of Homeland Security's 2024 strategic plan basically mimics this end-to-end biometric travel. It's being framed as anti-terror and anti-trafficking, but what it's doing is just normalizing mass biosurveillance with minimal oversight on every single American. Artificial intelligence. So the Stargate project was announced by the White House January 22nd last year. It is a public-private partnership between the government and OpenAI, SoftBank, and Oracle, huge tech companies. They're going to invest $500 billion over the next 4 years in building AI infrastructure across the U.S., so data centers and their energy infrastructures. In July last year, America's AI Action Plan was published by the White House and is based on 3 pillars: accelerating AI innovation, so deregulation, building American AI infrastructure, the data centers and the supporting infrastructure, and leading in international AI diplomacy and security. So they're creating a global alliance. In July of last year, an executive order was signed that accelerates federal permitting of data center infrastructure. And the Genesis mission was signed in November of last year. So this created a massive new federally controlled AI system. And there are risks associated with this. It's turning federal data into a surveillance machine. It gathers data from all sources, including private data brokers. These are called what they call approved private sector partners. And it's going to blur the line between science and weapons because a lot of these AI systems are dual use, shared across civilian and military platforms. And then it's just being developed at high speed with little or no review and oversight. In March of this year, the White House released a national AI legislative framework, and a bill was introduced in Congress, a companion bill to codify it into law. It is the most aggressive federal push yet to define how Americans access, use, and build AI systems. I don't think people understand that this is happening. It's going to create federal centralization of AI regulation, so it will override every single state's AI laws. And it will require age verification across platforms and possibly devices. It imposes a duty of care on these companies. So platforms will have to continually monitor users' behavior to prove to the government that their product does not contribute to harm. And then developers of advanced AI systems are now mandated to comply with this. Penalties could be as high as $1 million a day. This month, an executive order was signed that creates access to federal AI-enabled cybersecurity tools and services. And these will be offered to state and local authorities and rural hospitals, community banks, local utilities. So think all levels of society. And the problem with this is that it's embedding federal AI tools into every level of our society and everything we do. Surveillance. This is a big one. National Security Presidential Memo 7. It directs the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force to investigate potential federal crimes. That is called pre-crime. And pre-crime is when you intervene before an act occurs based on suspicion, association, or ideology. So this memo creates a mandate to treat ideas and associations as evidence of terrorism. And I'm going to give the example in the memo. It singles out anti-fascism, and it describes it as anti-Americanism, anti-capitalism, and anti-Christianity, extremism on migration, race, and gender, and hostility towards those who hold traditional American views on family, religion, and morality. Well, these are not crimes. They're opinions, they're criticisms, they're cultural attitudes. These should be protected in a free society. This memo threatens multiple constitutional safeguards, the First Amendment, Fourth, and Fifth. So how is this biometric digital ID push happening at home? How's it being implemented? So more than 40 states now issue mobile driver's licenses, which are digital, and they support digital ID wallets. Utah has now enacted legislation to enshrine a true digital ID system into law. However, there are a few states that are pushing back. Idaho actually recently banned mandatory digital ID with a new privacy law they passed recently. Over 20 states have enacted state age verification laws, and many will require personal data like a photo of a government ID or biometrics, facial scans, that kind of thing, just to access parts of the internet. And yes, I want to protect our children. I think they're worth protecting, but not in this way. Bottom line, age verification laws are not about child safety. They are about capturing the biometric data of children because they have to, and everyone else, because they have to do it on everyone to see who's a child. You have to prove you're not a child. Okay, so the push for these digital IDs around the world, it's happening everywhere. It is not just in the US. For instance, Switzerland just adopted a biometric national ID. Kyrgyzstan forced all their businesses to go cashless. There has been a huge push the last few months for countries who have national biometric IDs, forcing their citizens. Mexico is going door to door and forcing everyone to register their biometric ID with their SIM card. Otherwise, they can't have self-service. That is ridiculous. That is the most popular form of communication, and they're going to shut people out. As an example, the FCC right now has a notice in the Federal Register that is going to mandate self-service providers to collect government IDs on everyone who has a new and existing service with them. So the government is forcing private companies to do this too. Just it's a backdoor way. And this is happening right now. The comments for this notice shut down June 25th. So you actually have the opportunity to make public comments, which I would encourage you to do. So this 2008 white paper by the Stop Real ID Coalition, which I read, was wonderful. This coalition is now over 60 organizations strong. Their article breaks down how the Real ID Act does not really create a national ID. It's actually creating an international biometric ID. The Department of Homeland Security has an international biometric information sharing system. 2 companies partnered this year to bring globally interoperable biometric identity verification software to market globally. And then the beta test for global contactless travel just happened in the last couple of months. So traveling from international airport to international airport, you didn't have to pull out any ID. It was all biometric. And who's behind this? So during the United Nations Summit of the Future in 2024, 193 member states committed to rolling out a digital ID scheme as part of a digital public infrastructure, or DPI. And a DPI consists of three main things. And you're going to notice when I say what they are, because I've talked about them: a digital ID, digital currency, and a massive data exchange. The United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, they're huge in this, and other organizations like global think tanks, non-governmental organizations, governments from around the world, and tons of companies. So I want to wrap up this section with Catherine Austin Fitts, because something she said recently just kind of pulled it all together in a way I thought that so many people would understand. So I want to finish with her summation.
Okay, so this is one that we've all seen before. If you think of a herd of livestock who's had 3 corrals put up, and they haven't noticed those corrals because it doesn't go into effect as a control grid until you put the fourth side of the corral up. But I want to just show all the different things that are being built to build the control grid. So we have the digital ID, we have smartphones, smart cities, the telecommunications and surveillance that Renette has been briefing us on. We have social media, we have the neurological weaponry, QR codes, which Polly talks about a lot. We have digital elections and manipulation of elections. Now we have AI, digital IDs, and programmable money. All these different things individually are presented to people as things that make life convenient. The problem is, once you put up that fourth side of the corral, which is digital IDs and programmable money and the data centers with AI, suddenly you snap into a control grid. And it's very hard for people to understand, QR codes are convenient. Why should I not use them? And it's very hard to understand what you're helping to build, that digital prison. So I had said in 2020, okay, so this is one.
Whoops. Okay, so I wanted to lighten the mood after all of that. Hopefully it makes some of you laugh. So now I want to get to the part where I empower you. I show you things that you can do that can make a difference and hopefully give you some hope. So first and foremost, get rid of your real IDs. If you have a star in the upper right-hand corner, you have a real ID compliant card. Citizens Council for Health Freedom is an amazing organization. They were one of the first to jump on the bandwagon to fight against the real ID because they understood what it meant. 5 states you cannot do this in: Florida, Georgia, Mississippi, Texas, and Wyoming. Other states, they don't tell you you have an option. You actually have to go into the DMV physically to get it changed. And this organization has information on how to do that and what to do if they give you pushback. So mass noncompliance, this is so important. Get rid of your real ID and any other digital IDs. Do not support the digital ID system, and get rid of your digital ID wallets. Use cash as much as possible. Use wired devices. Unlock your devices with PIN numbers or patterns instead of your face or fingerprint. Don't use AI chatbots. Don't use QR codes. Opt out of using biometrics everywhere you can. Build community outside of the digital matrix. Promote human-centric work, play, and school. And start talking about this because people don't understand what the dangers of the real ID really are. Challenge yourself. Take off your smartwatch or ring, or turn off your Alexa for a day and notice your dependence on it and question it. Minimize your reliance on your smartphone. Don't make it everything. Print out your boarding pass. Don't pay with it. Use a paper calendar. Resist data centers being built in your area. Don't give money to companies supporting the control grid. Make your house dumb again. Don't use self-checkout registers. They are being embedded with AI and facial recognition, but they're also getting rid of those jobs your high school kids, like your children who are in high school, like to have when they're in high school because it's a convenient job. Most important, work with your state and local elected officials and sheriffs, educate them, and help try to get them to put up guardrails for all of this infrastructure that's happening. Get out of big banks, support local banks and credit unions, get to know your banker, and start thinking now what you're going to do when you're being forced to do this. Is there an opt-out? Drive instead of flying, things like that. Minimize your exposure to AI and data harvesting, so turn off most of your app permissions. I promise your apps will work. Most of mine have almost no permissions except for network. Disable AI features on everything. Turn off your Bluetooth and Wi-Fi unless you're actively using it. Cover cameras front and back. Block your microphones. Use a dumb phone or a de-Googled phone. That's a little more privacy oriented. And just reduce your screen time in general. Starve them of your data. I put this quote in here because I loved it. I'm giving you the information, and now it's in all of your hands to decide what you will do with it. For more information, shameless plug, the podcast I have with my friends, we talk about the globalist technocratic agenda and how it's being implemented. I know some people are visual learners, so there are some videos here that are really good talking about what's happening right now. And then the Citizens Council for Health Freedom, I talked about them a bit earlier. They have wonderful resources, printouts that you can share with people and really talk you through what are the issues with it and what you can do. So before we start the Q&A section, I want to leave you with some final thoughts. If you are feeling overwhelmed, that is normal. It's okay. Just start with small steps. Do not give into fear. That's very important. I hear a lot, they already know my information. I don't do anything that I don't care. I don't need to hide anything. Well, that's not the point. They need our constant data 24/7. 2-month-old data is irrelevant. The more you use these technologies, the more it feeds that beast. So we need to starve it. And a lot of these technologies were put into place for a reason, to normalize these behaviors. So when it does become mandatory, most people aren't even going to question it. They're just going to comply. They need a majority of us to comply for this to really work. Find balance in your life. Do something you love. Find balance. It's really important. Strengthen your connection with your creator. And I'm going to leave you with a question. What conveniences are you willing to give up to help resist the technocratic takeover of our country? Duty is ours and results are God's. And I just love this quote from Ronald Reagan. But all right, that's the end. I just have a whole bunch of my links I used for resources.
So, Tara, we're going to send out those links, but we've had some confusion. Some of the links you gave us, we posted in the chat. People can't get into them. And I want to let everyone know you need to log into your JBS account for any link that came from SharePoint, like the TNA links. So you need to log into your JBS account in order to see those things. And Wendy will be emailing you all a set of those links tomorrow. And if there's any issues, you can respond to her and she'll help you figure it out. And Tara, we have a bunch of questions for you.
Okay.
So let's see.
I'll do my best to answer.
Well, the first one was, can we get a PDF of the slides? And of course, Wendy answered and said, email me tomorrow at wbodden@jbs.org. Where are they? Oh, there's 8. Are there members of Congress that are champions for our privacy and who will fight against this AI surveillance intrusion? Do we have anybody you can suggest we align with?
Honestly, there aren't many. He's going to be gone soon. I think that's where the Freedom Index, the JBS Freedom Index comes into play. You can see how I mean, Lisa, you can speak better to this than I can, but you can see how our legislators are voting about topics when it comes to AI, data centers, digital IDs, digital money, and see how they vote. And those would be the ones to really connect with.
And I think that something that we have encouraged, at least the field coordinators have tried to encourage, I used to be one, when a legislator votes the way you want them to vote, let them know and thank them, because all they hear are complaints and griping about the way they disappoint us. But when they do something right, we need to let them know. A quick phone call, a postcard, that will go a long way to helping keep them on the straight and narrow. Tara, someone wants to know how someone holding real estate is going to be issued a digital token for real property. And is there a way around that?
That's a really great idea. There was, I don't believe I put it in my presentation, but there was an executive order. It was to read, but it started allowing the digitalization of real estate. That is not my area of expertise. I apologize. I don't know how that's going to work, but they're setting up the system to be able to do that right now.
Steal my property before I've even paid it off. It's interesting that Donald Trump, the big real estate magnate, would go for that. Okay, according to Revelation 13, and he, the Antichrist, causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save that he had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. What do you suspect this mark in the hand or forehead will be?
Exactly what that says.
One of those little rice pellets.
Well, right. And I've seen videos of people who have actually embedded them in their hand and they think it's so cool. They take videos of themselves paying with their hand.
That's usually in like Sweden or Norway or something, right?
No.
It's here?
Yeah. So it's starting to happen. It's not very common, but yes, it's starting to happen. And that's going to end up being what digital IDs transform into, but we're not there yet.
I'll just get one of those pocket puppies and cut it out of my hand and stick it in his paw and I'll swipe his paw. Sorry. I know, cruelty to animals, sorry. Chris Wales asks if we'll send out a PDF of the slides. And also, can a class action lawsuit strike down executive orders? It seems all of this was done by executive orders, which are unconstitutional.
I know. And so what I have observed over the last several years is that there has been a push, and honestly, this is with any presidency, but we're seeing a huge push for the digital infrastructure since 2025, that they know it is, and they do it anyways and get as much passed through as possible, because by the time someone gets a class action together, gets it in the courts, it will take years and years and years to litigate. And then whatever is being done is already done. That's the best answer I can give. They're doing it and they don't care if they get sued because it's going to take so long to even get a decision.
Can we choose not to have a smartphone?
Absolutely. So they are called minimalist phones now instead of dumb phones. There are actually quite a few companies out there that sell them. There's different ranges. Like you can get a safer smartphone, like a de-Googled phone, or smartphones that are locked, so you can only have like 5 or 6 apps, or get a dumb phone, which I have gotten. It's an old style flip phone that only texts and calls, and I'm getting ready to transition over to that. I just have to get a couple other things set up before I do that. But like I said in my presentation, Stop relying on smartphones because they're doing this on purpose. I actually literally saw a woman almost lose her mind because she couldn't find her cell phone. It's scary. But I have a paper calendar that I write everything in. I have a little book that I wrote all my contacts out in, because what if I drop my phone and the battery breaks or my cell service is cut off? I still have access to all my phone numbers, doing those kind of things. But yes, a dumb phone is a good idea. It's not going to stop everything, but it'll be way better.
So Carol Rauchi says, we need the links on how to fight this. So what is your best suggestions on how to fight this?
Well, a lot of what I said at the end, those are everything that people need to do to put their foot down and let the government know we don't want this. All of those things I listed. And an important one is educating your local and state elected officials and your sheriff about what this is. I made that JBS has successes with their local activism, the grassroots activism. This is how you can make change.
Join your chapter and get involved with them and get as many people to opt out of all of these things. Get rid of your biometric IDs and your, federal ID, the smart ID, the driver's licenses,
the real ID, yeah.
The real ID, and cash, guys, cash. There's a organization that's pushing, and I know we have a member, Drew Heaton. She's working with a group, and we have, I wish I had one in front of me, but we're using goldbacks. They're called goldbacks. And if you want more information on that, email Wendy and she'll get a hold of me. Tara's about to show you a beautiful gold back. It's money with real gold in it. It's like dollar bills. It has a fraction of gold in it. And we're trying to get here in the Tucson area, our Tucson chapter, we are starting to work and try and get businesses to accept these. And this is happening in other states like Utah and Idaho. So we're going to make our own money in a way. It's real gold, so it's real money. And we need to find it. We need to find businesses that will accept it. And we're pushing that. We were at lunch the other day and Drew gave the waiter a tip with one of the goldback bills. So he was very excited too. He just was marveling over it. And so if we do more of that, then we are opting out of the system they're creating for us and we're creating our own system. I hate to say it, but grow some food or support your local farmer. I have a farmer up the street. Every Monday I go up and I get a gallon of milk and I get my fresh eggs, and it's a whole variety of eggs from his ducks and chickens and all kinds of colors. And I get raw milk, and that's one way of support. It's actually cheaper than some of the stuff in the grocery store if I'm looking for the super healthy stuff. And it's great. So that's how we fight this, guys. We join together. You get your neighbors, you educate your neighbors, because people who have power or get money, and it's our money a lot of the time, it's our tax dollars, and they're siphoning it to organizations that pay them to run their campaigns, and they get to keep a lot of it in their pockets. And they have no reason to protect our rights. They have no reason, because we're the new slave class, folks. I shouldn't be saying that, but that's what this is about. That's what this whole thing is about, is enslaving all of humanity in a one world government, in a technocratic system that we cannot escape. And all those movies about pre-crime and all of those things, that was just predictive programming. That was just priming the pump and getting you ready for what's coming. So you might want to go watch them. And then all the happy endings that you see, those aren't going to happen unless we all opt out.
Exactly.
And in England with the flock cameras, they made a very aggressive fight, and they were spray painting them and clipping the wires on them and shutting that down in certain areas. I forgot what they called themselves. But this is all important, that you have to take individual action. This isn't calling a legislator and getting them to take action. It could be working with them to write legislation in your state, but you're fighting Goliath, and the only way to do it is fight him directly and be prepared. There are going to be people that suffer. We're all going to suffer.
But we don't want to condone violence or criminal damage.
No.
Mhm.
No.
But a lot of those video links that I had in my presentation, I think Lisa can post in the chat. Those have things that you can do too.
Wendy posted them. We have a question from
Okay,
David
good.
Campbell. He said, I've opted out of California Real ID. On my
Sweet.
driver's license, top right, however, it states federal limits apply. Can you please explain this statement?
I know in Arizona that when you get a non-compliant ID, it says not for federal purposes. And so the Real ID was touted so that you can go into federal buildings and nuclear facilities and TSA. And that's probably what it's referring to, those limitations. It's just worded differently in each state.
Yeah. I'm getting asked if a downloadable version of this webinar will be allowed. And generally, that's not our habit. Wendy would have to answer that question. You can email her, but a replay with all the links will be sent out. And I will prevail upon her to allow the replay to last some time. And if you found it valuable and you want to invite a couple of friends over to your house and get a link that would work for you to share this in a small group, then let Wendy know, and I'm sure we can pull it up for you and give you a special link. Her email is WBODDEN. It's Wendy Bodden @jbs.org. Let's see. Mac Bircher, I know who that is. I rarely ever use my driver license for anything, and when I do, it's simply to confirm my age or something like that to a cashier who merely looks at it and says, okay, never scans it or feeds it into any sort of card reader. So what difference does it really make if it's Real ID or not?
Well, that's not the point. The point is they're forcing everyone to get biometric.
Aren't the Real IDs trackable? Have like RFIDs in them?
That I'm not sure.
Okay.
But I know that they're biometric pictures and the DMVs are collecting all that and sharing it with the states and federal government. It doesn't matter. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Why all of a sudden can you not identify me by my regular driver's license I've had for 40 some, I mean, I'm not going to tell how old I am, but for decades I've had it. And now all of a sudden you can't identify me from it because I have to have a biometric ID. It makes no sense. The point is that they're forcing us all into getting these biometric IDs so they can build this public digital infrastructure to control us.
I think if you have one more comment, but I want to let you know that Cynthia Carlson said, and I think we can all agree, Terra, thank you so much for compiling all this information. Amazing how little real information we are able to get through everyday channels.
Very true. And the only reason why I found all this is because I am a researcher and I was doing my podcast and I started seeing all this and I'm like, wait, what's that? And so I would start digging deeper.
Do you want to give us the name of the podcast and where people can find it?
Oh, yeah, I actually gave Wendy the link. It's Libertarian-Minded, and you can find it on all the platforms like Spotify and Apple Play. And we actually have our own website now. It's kind of under development. It's libertarian-minded.com.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. Do you have anything more you want to say to everybody?
Oh, just thank you so much. And don't lose hope. I know what I have given all of you is pretty intense, and some of it is startling. But I want you to know that there is hope and there are things that you can do and things you can do to empower yourself. Please pay attention to what I say at the end because this is the most important thing. All those things that you can do. And if you're overwhelmed, that's okay. It's okay. I have days where I'm overwhelmed and then I get over it and I keep going.
She calls me and then I call her.
But that's normal. You just
need
have
friends, folks.
Yeah.
We need community.
Yeah. And just find balance and take small steps. Do one little thing for a week or two, and then build on that and do one little more thing. And you'll find when you stand back and realize the dependence you have on this stuff, it's almost frightening. and gives you a reason to continue to make those small step forward and get out of this digital nightmare.
I want to thank the Mesa, Arizona chapter for supporting this webinar and bringing Terra to us. I have a lot of good friends up in that chapter, and I love them dearly. And all of you who, if you're not a member of the John Birch Society, I encourage it. I have made friends that are in this fight, all of it with us, and I'm not alone anymore. You know, I'm not alone anymore in this battle. And someone in the comments said, pray, absolutely pray. One of the reasons I came to work for the Birch Society was their tagline, less government, more responsibility, and with God's help, a better world. And you better believe it, folks. We know who wins in the end, but we also know that there could be very dark times. And so we have to be willing, like Jesus did on the cross, excuse me for preaching, but like Jesus Christ did on the cross, we have to prepare for suffering and we have to accept it, because that may be our lot in life at some point with, and it is dark and it is the Antichrist, but we know that God wins in the end and it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. Duty is ours, results are God's.
That's right.
Yeah.
Duty is ours, results is God's. Thank you, Terra, so much.
You're welcome.
Good night, everybody.